Roosevelt began the long trip home. Slowly, the long black funeral train south. Then down Pennsylvania Avenue to the beat of muffled drums, the president was borne for the last time to the executive mansion that for 12 years had been his official home. The passing of FDR from the American scene came as a personal shock to the nation. People wept openly, unashamed of their grief. Drawn by 6 white horses, the flag-draped caisson was brought to the main entrance of the White House, carried into the great East Room where 80 years before, almost to the day, the body of Abraham Lincoln also had laid in state. At Hyde Park, his ancestral home in Dutchess County, New York, the guns of West Point cadets rang down the final curtain on the man of destiny known round the world as FDR. To measure something of his greatness, we turn back the clock to Franklin Roosevelt as a young man making his first political campaign, to the time when, only 28 years of age, he was elected New York State Senator and broke the powerful Republican machine that had ruled Dutchess County for 28 years. Emerging as a national figure, he served President Wilson as Assistant Secretary of Navy. In 1920, as running mate of Ohio's James M. Cox, FDR, at the age of 38, was the youngest vice presidential candidate in history. Married on St. Patrick's Day 1905 to Anna Eleanor Roosevelt, niece of the illustrious Teddy, FDR founded a dynasty typical of his Hudson River Dutch forebears. It was to the Roosevelt Retreat, the vacation cottage on Campobello Island, that FDR sailed with his friends and family after the strenuous campaign for the vice presidency. And it was in these same waters, the Bay of Fundy, that he was first stricken with the dread polio germ that was to paralyze his legs, but never his life. Called in 1928 to the state capitol in Albany, Franklin Roosevelt was elected governor of New York. With Al Smith, his old friend, the happy warrior, at his side, he threw himself into the fight for better government, became the champion of the common man, was widely talked of as next Democratic candidate for the presidency of the United States. And with big, genial James A. Farley swinging the gavel, the die was cast. A country still mired in the morass of depression wanted a new president. Called to Chicago to accept the nomination, Governor Roosevelt flew from Albany with his wife, son Elliot, and son John. Few knew it then, but this was the beginning of an era unparalleled in American history. FDR's appearance in Chicago Stadium was the beginning of a series of spectacular personal triumphs. Swept into office by the greatest landslide in history, his first words were fearless, prophetic.
I am prepared, under my constitutional duty, to recommend the measures that a stricken nation in the midst of a stricken world may require. These measures, or such other measures, as the Congress may build out of its experience and wisdom, I shall seek within my constitutional authority to bring to speedy adoption. But in the event that the Congress shall fail to take one of these two courses, in the event that the national emergency is still critical, I shall not evade the clear course of duty that will then confront me. I shall ask the Congress for the one remaining instrument to meet the crisis: broad executive power to wage a war against the emergency as great as the power that would be given to me if we were in fact invaded by a foreign foe.
FDR's first term was marked by an ominous period of world unrest. Men of many nations were again taking up arms. our own national defense was at its lowest ebb. America knew flood and famine, drought and the Dust Bowl. FDR brought farm relief and flood control, water power and giant public works. Social Security was born. Old age insurance became a new responsibility of government. The price of gold was fixed. The American dollar became the soundest in the world. The forgotten man was remembered. The country hailed its leader as a pathfinder. The initials FDR began to stand for progress, for national security. The Fireside Chat became an American institution. With Steve Early, Marvin McIntyre, the White House secretarial staff helped in the preparation of his radio reports to the nation. The President's talks were masterpieces of simplicity and directness.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
My friends, the American public...
And with that now familiar salutation, he brought his messages straight to the firesides of the people. He talked with them in their homes about the vital issues of the day. Roosevelt never gave up hope in his battle against infantile paralysis. In the healing waters of Warm Springs, in the White House pool, swimming was his one relaxation, his only exercise. How he organized the great Warm Springs Foundation for the eventual benefit of the nation's 500,000 polio victims will forever stand as a living monument to his name. And each year on his birthday, all over the land, little children sing his praise.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear President. Happy birthday to you.
This intimate study of the President and his beloved Fala is one of the rare personal portraits in a busy, crowded life. For no man in our time, nor in any time perhaps, has been called on to make the momentous decisions that have been his. His one goal, his greatest ambition, was to lead the nations of the world into a lasting peace. Royalty from many nations, the King and Queen of England, have been guests in his home. With the world's most powerful rulers, he commanded supreme respect. With a keen grasp of international affairs, he foresaw by many years the trend of the world's march. In 1936, speaking at Chautauqua, New York, he gave the nation words that have been quoted again and again.
I've always thought that peace, like charity, begins at home. And that's why we have begun at home, here in North and South and Central America. But peace in the Western world is not all we seek. I have seen war. I have seen war on land. I have seen blood running from the wounded. I have seen children starving. I have seen the agony of mothers and wives. I hate war.
1940 found the nation facing war. Voters took the third-term issue squarely to the polls. Could the magic power of FDR shatter all precedent? The voice of the people was heard.
The results are now conclusive. Roosevelt wins.
The nation was jubilant. FDR had done it again. And at Hyde Park, Squire Roosevelt and his family received the well wishes of their neighbors. Again, the President addressed the nation. In the presence of cabinet members, of diplomats and leaders from nations south of the border, FDR asked for broader powers than had ever before been given to any American president.
The first and fundamental fact is that what started as a European war, as the Nazis always intended it should develop, into a war for world domination. Therefore, with profound consciousness of my responsibilities to my countrymen and to my country's cause, I have tonight issued a proclamation that an unlimited national emergency exists and requires the strengthening of our defense to the extreme limit of our national power and authority.
With the world facing the greatest conflict of all time, with the rights of all free people endangered, Roosevelt met Winston Churchill on the high seas, gave a pledge to the world, pledged the right of all people to choose their own form of government. History records this dramatic meeting as the birth of the Atlantic Charter. December 7th, 1941, a day of infamy that was burned into the pages of American history. The President faced a nation united.
I ask that the Congress declare that since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan on Sunday, December 7th, 1941, a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire.
In 1942, FDR startled the world by meeting Churchill, de Gaulle, and Giraud in Casablanca, gave the Axis 2 words: unconditional surrender. At Quebec, Roosevelt with Churchill planned the invasion of Europe, and with the future of civilization in the balance, the role these two played in this most critical period is indelibly written in history. At Cairo, for conferences with Chiang Kai-shek, FDR wrote a new chapter in international relations, gave assurance to the people of China of unstinted Allied aid in their war against Japan, was the guiding hand in bringing together the many conflicting forces of East and West. Such was the man who met Stalin for the first time at Tehran, who gave the world its first promise of complete accord between the three great powers. That these were called the Big Three was no empty phrase, and Franklin Roosevelt, steadfast in his convictions, was the biggest of them all. Steaming into Pearl Harbor for the first time since the outbreak of war, the Commander-in-Chief conferred with Admiral Nimitz and General MacArthur. That he took an active part in planning the war in the Pacific is now apparent, for it is known that from this conference emerged the blueprint for liberation of the Philippines. FDR began his fourth term in office firm in his belief that men are capable of their own government, that no king, no tyrant, no dictator can govern them as wisely as they can govern themselves. And upon that note, he placed the world's future on the conference table at Yalta, made plans to bring together the nations and the peoples of the world in a just and lasting peace. History has recorded that first step as the San Francisco Conference. In this, his last report to Congress and the American people, is to be found the text of his life. In the last words of a man grown tired in public service, is a heritage for all men everywhere.
I am confident that Congress and the American people will accept the results of this conference as the beginnings of a permanent structure of peace, upon which we can begin to build, under God, that better world in which our children and grandchildren, yours and mine, the children and grandchildren of the whole world, must live and can live.